We Made This.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast here on the We Made This podcast network. My name is Kurt North, and alongside me, as always, apart from on specials when I decide not to go on them, is Mark Adams. Mark, how you doing, mate?
Hello, I'm all right. I've not turned up for some specials as well, though, so you know.
Well, that's because we've told you not to, purely because they were based on, they will have spoilers for the Dave shows, because you're remaining without spoilers for those episodes, aren't you? So
yeah, and I don't understand why you didn't want to come on the RPG one.
Well, you know, I don't. It's just not my bag. It's just not my bag. Anyway, I'm going to do this because you mentioned this off air, right? I've got a bottle of lager with me now, so I'm going to open it. Okay, so it's open because it is the end of the season, end of season 2, and if this goes to plan, this will be closing just before Christmas, and we're going to have a Christmas special, aren't we?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
Of some form. We haven't quite nailed down the exact format yet, but we are looking forward to a Christmas special. Colin, will you be on this Christmas special?
I believe we all are, aren't we?
We are. We're going to try and get all 5 on, which is going to be pandemonium, and it's either going to be ace or it's going to suck.
We'll see. We'll see. I've yet to push the the fact that we might do a table read of an episode, but that's not quite there yet.
Can I be the cat?
Drunk. Do it drunk though. Do it drunk.
I don't drink.
Yeah. Oh.
I could just do it stupid.
You can do it stupid or drunk on love of the podcast. Colin.
Yeah, that'll do. That'll do.
Yeah, but before we get there, we need to talk about this episode, which is the final episode of the season, which is Parallel Universe, which was on BBC Two on the 11th of October, 1988. What were you both doing on the 11th of October, 1988, lads?
So I was 10, so probably watching... I'm trying to think what kind of stuff I watched when I was 10. I want to say The Tripods, but I know that was 1984. I was probably a Doctor Who fan at this point, thinking about it. In fact, I was probably mourning Doctor Who at this point, I think, because it was cancelled in 1987.
And that was Sylvester McCoy, wasn't it? Because I remember that vividly. That was obviously my Doctor, and we're all the same age, aren't we? So
the Hema scared the shit out of me. Do you remember those motherfuckers who came out of the sea and they were all kind of barnacled?
Yeah. Oh shit!
They were kind of like weird ass water vampires, and they killed Nicholas Parsons. Scary as shit.
So I was 6 in 1988. So I would have been watching probably things like Super Ted and
Batfink.
Yeah,
I think would have been out as well.
Were like a shield of steel.
Count Duckula,
exactly.
Nice. I think
I'll get you eat.
I think the Turtles were out by then.
Yeah, they probably were.
Yeah. Chronicles of Narnia, by the looks of it, was around about then. That was ace.
All right.
Oh, the telly show.
Yeah. I was definitely reading around about then.
I don't know why I'm even coming to this. Does anyone remember the TV version of Beauty and the Beast?
No.
With Vincent. You don't remember? Right, okay.
Do you remember Teabag and T-shirt?
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
I don't remember that one, no.
Wouldn't it be good if there was like a podcast on the We Made This podcast network about kids' TV from people from late Generation X? Wouldn't it be good?
Or Zennial.
Maybe Zennials.
It'll never work.
Probably won't. Anyway, at RTC Pod, that is right in the childhood, and that is my new podcast, which is brilliant. You should check it out. I talk about all my favourite kids' telly. Thank you for that opportunity to plug my shit, Kurt.
Okay, well, I got my Star Trek in last week, so you've got that in this week, so we're doing all right.
We need to.
By the time this goes out,
we need to somehow shoehorn in old Kerrang CDs.
Don't worry. There's a disco scene coming up today, so we'll get it in somehow. Anyway, yes, we're going to talk about this episode, Parallel Universe. And something we didn't mention last week is that last week was the last ever time we hear the introduction before we move on to new title credits.
You're right.
Because we don't get any here.
And we don't get the Holly recap either.
No.
That was the last Holly recap about singing potatoes.
It was. Yep. Wasn't going out with a bang particularly, that one, was it?
I liked that one.
It was all right.
But I liked that.
It was all right, but it's not the most memorable of them.
No. I must admit, I didn't remember it until I physically watched it. So, yeah, it didn't land anyway. But anyway, we get tongue-tied. Now, this is something that I do remember vividly.
Yes.
Do you remember the first time you ever saw tongue-tied, or what do you think of the song and the opening here, Colin?
Well, yeah, I remember the first time I saw it, which would have been when it was either when I got the commercial VHS of Series 2, or it was when my dad had taped it off the telly for me to watch, because it was around Series 5-ish when I started watching. So that means that Tongue Tied had already been in the charts, but I hadn't noticed it, because it did get released as a single in 93, which was 5 years after the episode aired, which is a bit weird. But
well, it's even got Dwayne Dibley in it.
Yeah,
as well, that video.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's got to be said, it's a bit of a catchy song. It's not something I would generally choose to listen to. It's got that really annoying, overcompressed, really thin Stratocaster sound on the guitar. Which
I mean, with that Stratocaster sound, if you add a bit more crunch to it and maybe a bit more distortion, use an actual proper amp and stuff, do you think it would be a bit more rocky, something more to your taste, maybe some heavy rock or something?
I mean, I'm not just into noisy rock stuff. It's just that particular guitar tone it belonged in the 80s and should have stayed there.
Does.
But
you're not catching the flag, though, are you? You're not catching the flag that you could actually potentially push a podcast that you're on.
Well, I was just about to push another podcast that I'm not on, but one of our other presenters is on, because it fucking sticks in your head for ages. So we need Carl with his cerebral jukebox to drill it out of our brains.
Ooh, we could do a crossover episode where we look at Tongue Tied, but we get Carl to present it and ask us whether we want to remove it from our head.
That's a good special.
Jukebox on Twitter, if you want to follow Carl's podcast. It is brilliant. And the thing about this song, which is weird for me, was similar to Colin. I got into Red Dwarf later, and I watched Series 1 and 2 way after I'd seen 4 and 5. And I bought the single of Tongue Tied.
Wow.
Not realising, because I hadn't seen Series 2 at that point, not realising that it had been on the show. I just thought it was Red Dwarf have released a single. Isn't that amazing? And then when I got the VHS of Series 2, I was like, fucking hell.
It got to number 17 in the charts in October 1993.
But this is the thing. We keep harping on about how different the culture was. But the reality is you couldn't get your Netflix to watch all the previous seasons.
Yeah.
And they did release Series 1 and 2 later than Series 3 and 4 and 5 on VHS. And I didn't have very much money. So when I bought these VHSs, I bought the ones with the most spectacular front covers.
Right.
And it just so happened that Series 1 and 2 I got much later than the others.
Because they're a bit greyer.
Yeah, exactly. And so I came to Tongue Tied in such a weird-ass way. And I thought, isn't this cool that they've done a single from the telly show? Knowing it was 6 or 8 years old.
You know what? I think the full-length video was on one of the Smeg-Ups, and I think I might have got that before I got Series 2.
Yeah, I think it might have been.
So I think I heard it on there first.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is, I don't think I want to talk about the full-length video. We should make that a short special at some point.
Well, I think you're right though. If Carl was up for it for a bit of a transitional kind of crossover.
A crossover event.
A crossover event of Red Dwarf. And we come on and talk about Tongue Tied and talk about the video on top of that, then I think that might be a way around it. Yeah. Certainly a way of thinking about it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
even though Carl's not here, we're doing it.
It is a very, very catchy song at the end of the day, isn't it? I mean, I know you're saying
Carl, if you're listening to
kind
this,
of Strat sound. Yeah. I know what you say, Carl, with the over kind of processed sound. It has got that 80s vibe to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's got that, the very kind of... There's our guitar player who's doing a few bits here and there for us. He retired from the band a couple of years back, but he's coming back to help us with the inevitable issues that COVID-19 gave us. So we've kind of like having to come back to the band in a different way when we eventually get to play.
Right.
But his guitar processor is something to behold. It definitely would have that sound on it. But yeah, and he always stuck to it. It's very kind of it probably really good like rack. But it's just.
I could make that sound. It's essentially a really clean guitar. It's a Stratocaster on the treble pickup and the mid pickup out of phase with a compressor, which I could do fairly easily. But
right, nerds.
I don't want
up.
to.
I have no idea what you're talking about. You two are clearly musicians, and I'm not.
Do you never compress your podcast, Mark?
Do I do what now?
Compress your podcasts? You never compress them?
What are you blithering about? So,
Sorry.
I get that you're both musicians, and Colin even did the fucking theme tune to this show. It's dead good, and I love it. But I don't know what the buggery bollocks you're chatting about. It was great fun, and the actors committed to the dance. What do you want? Bloody hell.
I also do like the backing vocals in it.
It's wonderful.
Excellent.
It's genuinely wonderful, but I'm coming at this from a guy who's got no clue about music. I just know what I like when I like it. And this was great fun, and I loved the commitment.
That's all you need.
Okay, so
it wasn't the commitment.
For the commitment, it wasn't the commitment. It wasn't the Fifth Dimension either. But yeah, it was. But what do you think to Lister's little his little piece when he's going up to the high note? So, Mark, let's go to that. Let's go to that section.
I wonder how long this whole thing took to film, because it's more elaborate than you might think.
It was I think it was a full day, but they did manage to do it all in one day. But obviously, there's going to have been a fair bit of practicing before that, for particularly for Chris and Craig to get the dance routine, because neither of them are dancers, but did a really good job.
Yeah, I would guess that it was a cakewalk for Danny John Jules. But again, so impressed with Craig Charles and Chris Barry. They did brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly.
And as we mentioned in the last episode, it was choreographed by Charles Huggins, who was Queeg in the previous episode.
And they have actually said that it's the fact that you've got someone who can dance and you've got the two others who obviously aren't dancers, but the fact that it was a three-piece meant that they could use Danny's on Jules separately. So the fact that you've got, like, because a lot of obviously dance routines and that you would have like and a lot of people would do this, where you'd have the group dancing together and doing moves, but then you'd have the lead singer or the singer of that piece, say if it was like a boy band or something, that would break off that dance and then come back into it. So the fact that both Chris Barry and Craig Charles just had to learn their parts, and then Danny would have to come back into that mode, makes it a lot easier to choreograph, because you've got your lead dancer there and you've got the backing dancers, and then you've obviously got the even further backing dancers who were like sort of in the frame as well. So I think because of the makeup of them as a whole, I think it works.
Can either of you two dance?
Yes.
No.
I can bounce up and down, and I can get drunk and think I can dance when I'm 20 years ago when I was trying to pull the pretty boys. But No, this is real, actual dance. Did you say you can dance, Kurt? How difficult is this as a dance?
Well, the thing is, it's a different style of dance because I'm coming at it from a very lock and pop Michael Jackson kind of era. So I can moonwalk and do everything, and I'll send you a video when we're off air of me doing
If you send me this video, I will post it on our Twitter.
I know you will. It was from a mate's 40th. He's 10 years older than me, but I did a full dance routine to a Michael Jackson tune.
Amazing.
I mix up with him. So but his style, the style that obviously Danny John Jules is. It's proper like proper like West Side Story kind of stuff, isn't it? It's proper musical theatre, which is nothing. I mean, I'm saying I can dance. I basically learnt everything all by myself and didn't have any formal training or anything like that at all. But the stuff that he's doing is proper like pointed toes and all that kind of thing. So. But some of the stuff, I mean, because there's a bit of Michael Jackson in there actually on certain bits. There's like a shuffle to the left and right at one point, and but I think the stuff that Craig Charles and Chris Barry were given you still got to learn it. You've still got to learn it. You know what I mean? It's not something that you can do easily, and I think taking a day for it is quite a good feat for them. Anyway, enough of my dancing. But it is interesting as I say. It's some of the things like Flippity Flop, which I always remember. But the fact that Lister goes and holds his balls and just gets that high pitch thing is a lovely moment. But this idea of this dream recorder, because that comes in a few times over the course of the season, actually, and the fact that Cat's trying to find a dream that he had, and what a wonderful invention that would be if you could do that. Would you want one? Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't remember my dreams whatsoever.
No,
so
neither do I.
I'll wake up in the morning and my partner wakes up next to me, funnily enough, and he'll talk about how he had these crazy dreams and he'll be able to go into great detail. And I'll be like, because I literally never remember my dreams. And it drives me crazy that he has these weird and wonderful ridiculous things involving me, the cat, not the cat from Red Dwarf, our cat, and goodness knows what else. And he tells me these stories in the morning, and I'm like, morning. So yes, I want a fucking dream recorder.
Okay, but how would you find? Because the thing is, Cat's looking for a dream he had. So where would you start? Would you just like sort of go, let's like reading a book, just like I'll start at the beginning and I'll watch my dreams and see which one I like.
Yeah, I'd watch the ones that I'd had so that I could actually experience them, because I don't experience my dreams.
Colin, are you a dreamer?
Well, I'm not the only one.
Brilliant.
But I quite not every night, but sometimes I had one last night, and I woke up in the morning and was trying to remember what it was, and could just remember sort of flashes of random sort of things, but couldn't work out exactly what had happened in it. So yeah, it'd be really, really useful for that to go back and go, oh, it was complete nonsense. Because chances are it probably was.
Yeah. I remember recently, and it's just, again, I'm like you, Mark, I very, very, very rarely remember stuff. And this dream I had maybe about 3 or 4 weeks ago was the first one I remembered for, I'm talking probably over a year at least. And it was based on the X-Files, which is quite unusual. I did have a reoccurring dream that I was friends with you too. I remember that.
Sorry, Colin and me, or the overrated band?
The band that have great songs early in their career, which you have been told they do.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, so I used to be good friends with them. But that was a reoccurring one, and I used to have different dreams in different times. And the other one I had when I was a kid, and these are basically the only 3 dreams I remember, is there was one on my local street, and where I used to walk down to the park, where we had London buses. You remember the good old London buses where it was open backed?
They were lost.
Yeah, double deckers. They were lost.
They must have been if they were London buses. They
Cumbria. Were lost. Yeah, in Cumbria. Yeah, they're 500 miles away. Yeah, that's how far behind the times Cumbria is. You know, we're talking about 1988. We've only hit 1990 up here. You know, it's 2020 and we're only in the 1990s up here. But yeah, it's and I remember being on that bus and it was full of zombies. And
awesome.
That scared the shit out of me.
Oh, so it was a nightmare. It wasn't a dream.
That was, yeah, well.
I don't particularly want to remember my nightmares. I want to remember the weird and wonderful dreamy shit.
Yeah. Well, those are basically the three that I remember anyway. But anyway.
So anyway, Queeg turns up.
Queeg turns
up. Oh, shit, no, that was last week.
Well, Queeg did turn up, didn't he? He choreographed the stuff.
He did?
So, yeah. Maybe, hey, I tell you what, you could retroactively fit that, couldn't you? That chick, because imagine if Charles Ogden, what's his name? Charles forget his name. Charles Organs. So if Charles Organs was actually in the performance, that would have been brilliant. The fact that if it's in the performance because he's remembering Queeg from the week before.
Yeah.
Oh, they should have done that.
Yeah, it would have worked.
That being said, it was fucking brilliant anyway. It didn't need Queeg.
The best,
it didn't need Queeg,
best bit of the choreography was Norman Lovett's ears. Doing his ear wiggly thing. Which
that was so
excellent.
dumb, and it should have been shit, but it wasn't.
The fact that Norman Lovett is actually enjoying himself seems just strange enough, doesn't it? He doesn't bop in his head. It's like, that doesn't work, but it does. Anyway, talking about Darren Brown is a particular friend, particular person that you quite like, Mark, isn't he?
I fancy him. He's hot.
Okay, he's hot. And he's also some form of hypnotist, and that's my tedious link. So,
what a segue!
What do you think to Rimmer's search for love in this scene? Because he's talking about his mesmer stare. I mean, there's a reason for it. We actually, obviously, later on we get the other Rimmer, but and the traits that they've got. But the very fact that he's using that, and what List actually says to him about the fact that, you know, can you not just talk to the people? Can you not just why are you trying these chat up lines? It's really interesting that, you know, because it's not something that I would ever do. I would never go up and try and chat someone up that way. It always has to be a natural conversation.
Right. For me.
So go on.
It really does feel like the scene is written to emphasise Rimmer's loneliness and ineptitude, and the fact that he'll give anything a go to try and find love. And, you know, shows like Bottom cover this with the episode where they have the kind of testosterone spray and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it really is 80s ick, isn't it?
Yeah. It's rapey as fuck, basically.
Yeah. And well, yes, I was trying not to use the word rapey, but yes, I use the word 80s ick as a way of describing stuff that I'm watching that I used to love and something problematic happens.
Yeah.
I talk about it a lot when I'm watching 80s films on my other podcast, Super Tap Film Club, and it's hard because these are things with really kind of wonderful memories that it's not quite, how do you deal with it? Because it wasn't quite as icky then, or wasn't considered quite as icky then as it is now. And it's not fair to kind of harangue the writers for what they've written, but it's also still is quite unpleasant to watch.
Yeah.
And I never quite know how to deal with it. You were right to come to me because you knew I would say fucking 80s ick. I say 80s ick every time there's something problematic. But I think almost looking at it in a kind of gentle way, saying, yes, this is icky, but it wasn't as icky at the time. It's not all that dissimilar to when, for example, at the start of some Tom and Jerry episodes where there was the black lady on the stool who had a very stereotypical voice, the way she spoke to Tom.
Yeah.
There was warnings at the start of those saying, this is now not how we do things. This is indicative of the time. And, you know, I listened to an audiobook recently. It was Robert Louis Stevenson, and there were some very interesting words used in that. And there was a little warning at the start saying, we haven't censored this because it's indicative of the time and it doesn't fit the modern values of audible.co.uk. And I guess that's all it needs would be...
Like a slight disclaimer.
Yeah, a disclaimer that we fucking wrote this in the 80s and this wasn't really as well analysed and the culture was different, blah, blah, blah. You can't change the fact that that is true, but you can acknowledge it, kind of sort of apologise and say, we've left it because we're not into censorship. And I don't feel like that's a particularly controversial opinion to have.
No, I can dig that.
Yeah, if you look at it from this point of view, right, so I'm just going to play a bit of devil's advocate here, right? So the fact that, you know, it's how to pick up girls by hypnosis, they go through it, that whole ilk of Rimmer with that mesmer stare. It's like what Colin said about the fact that Rimmer just can't deal with it in that situation. It's not, it could be a lot worse. It could be Lister could actually like re-emphasize or you know, get behind that conversation, but it's actually Lister who's calling him out on it. It's the way he's saying that, you know, that you're treating them like they're an alien species that need to be conquered.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So it's like he's calling him out on the fact that, you know, that's not the way to do things. And that's what I'm saying from just a little bit of devil's advocate there, that they're going probably too far one way to re-emphasize something else. But it could have been a lot worse had it been like the boys from the Dwarf say something like that. And it's not, you know what I mean?
Yes,
the reunited front of 80s ick.
Yeah, good point, well made, and I agree with that. I think it's played for laughs, which is what I find distasteful. But you're right, it isn't actually portrayed as acceptable behaviour because it is challenged by Lister. What I'm getting at is that the playing for laughs at all is where the 80s ick come from. But it could have been 80s ickier.
Yeah.
Rob Grant did actually acknowledge it recently. So with the commentaries that they've been doing on YouTube with the like watch along sort of things, they have like a live chat while they're doing it, and somebody said they thought that Rimmer was quite out of character in this because he doesn't normally seem like basically like a sex pest. He's normally more sort of asexual. But then Rob Grant said no, he thinks basically Rimmer's got this sort of learned response of how he thinks that you should attract women. That he's just got completely wrong, but that's how he thinks that it's just like ticking boxes and this is how it must work, but obviously really doesn't. So yeah,
and it goes back to that damaged childhood thing, doesn't it? I mean, if we'd just taken the ick aside from it, that just the concept of what they were trying to do there, it goes back to the fact that he's damaged. He can't deal with human interactions the way that most people would.
Yeah,
and you know, and as you say, he's trying to overcompensate for that by doing what people perceive at that time should be acceptable, which is clearly isn't, and that's why Lister calls him out on it, because Lister's a lot more rounded individual.
Yeah, and I think that once again, this is a strong case of Red Dwarf being a lot deeper than perhaps you think it is on a initial watching.
Yeah.
Which,
I mean, if either of you, I haven't. Yeah, I mean, I haven't. But has either of you ever used chat appliance before?
No.
Well, when I was recently out, I didn't so much come out of the closet, I rocketed out of the closet. And anything with a cock that wanted to have sex with me, I would have sex with them. So I'm going to tell you one of my favourite stories. This lad came up to me in my favourite nightclub, a place called Poptastic in Manchester, and he looks me up and down, and he just says, "Fancy a fuck?" So I looked him up and down, and I was like, "Yeah, all right." So I went back to his and we had sex. So the very following week, I was in Poptastic, and there was an attractive man, and I walked up to him and I looked him up and down, and I said, "Fancy a fuck?" And he looked me up and down, and he said, Nah, you're all right, mate. So that was the one time I used the chat-up line.
Oh, never mind. Well, you're happy now, aren't you? So you're all right. I'm the right guy.
I'm a good boy these days, but when I was in my 20s, someone literally had to say 3 words and I was in his fucking bed.
Oh, anyway, so you were conquered then.
It was Darren Brown.
If it was Darren Brown, you just have to look at me. No hypnotist involved. It was just like, there's Darren Brown and I'm naked.
But you don't know that. I think he hypnotised you years ago.
I mean, I did go and see him in Blackpool about 10 years ago.
Well, there you go. And Blackpool of all places as well, eh?
I love Blackpool.
Anyway, going back.
Are you not going to tell a story about chat-up lines, Colin, or is it just me humiliating myself?
It's going to have to be just you, because my usual technique was I didn't have one.
Yeah, I'm the same. Things just happened, and I
hide in the corner
how or why it happened. Oh man, fun and games. But it's good being in a band, though. It's all right. Anyway, but the Holly Hop Drive. So it is. Have either you seen the IT crowd? Because that kind of reminds me a little bit of the internet.
The internet,
the IT crowd.
Internet. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Holly's got a brilliant line to introduce it, though. When he appears and he says, "The Earl of Sandwich invented the sandwich.
Yeah.
John Morse invented Morse code. Plato invented the plate."
Invented the plate. And it's just, is this it? It's just a box of stop and start. This is the Red Dwarf I love. This is the stuff that I actually adore, when it's like, it's clearly calling itself out for what it is. The fact that, I know, Mark, we've talked previously about some of the inconsistencies or some of the set designs or whatever, but this is purely pointing itself at itself and so meta, and I just love it for what it is. It's like, it's just a box with stop and start on it. There's
definitely an element of, we know we've got a shit budget. Lol. So, yeah, I think acknowledging it is funny. Really, really funny. And good for them for not being precious about it and not trying to hide their limitations.
His instructions on how to use it are fantastic as well. It's like, well, the button that says start, you press to start it, and you can probably work the rest out yourself.
Oh man! So when we actually use the Holly Hop Drive, right? And this is something I think we'll get into this as the seasons go on, about certain tropes that Red Dwarf tend to use a lot. And I think this is one which isn't used a lot. I think it's a second memorable moment in a later season where Holly goes to look outside the window and he doesn't see Earth, and he goes up to the other side of the window. It's not there. And then Rimmer goes, the further thought occurs to me that we haven't budged a smeg an inch.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of gag as the all-time classic of, that does involve changing the bulb. It's a real kind of deadpan, kind of sardonic, just wonderful. It's pure Red Dwarf humour, I guess.
Yeah. And the one I'm particularly thinking about is when they've entered the time machine and they expect to go back to Earth, and it's like, well, we're in 16th century. I can't remember exactly what it was now. 16th century. I said, but where's Earth? Well, it's not a box that goes to other places. We're 16th century in deep space.
Yeah,
it's that kind of thing. It's just like, it's just brilliant. The way it's played for laughs is brilliant.
This kind of thing, right? If we were American, would we describe this as British humour? Is this you know what I mean? You kind of, there's supposed to be this fabled British humour. What is this fabled British humour?
I think it probably is. Because it's more understated than the really obvious jokes that you get in something like Friends or Frasier or something like that.
Or Red Dwarf USA.
Or Red Dwarf USA, exactly. So, I've not seen the pilots like you did. I imagine
Don't bother, mate.
No, I know. I imagine this is probably the kind of thing that was missing from it. Because it just wouldn't
you're right.
necessarily work with a US audience.
So Wikipedia says British humour is shaped by the relative stability of British society and carries a strong element of satire aimed at the absurdity of everyday life. So themes include class systems, sexual taboos, common techniques including puns, innuendo, and intellectual jokes.
So no, then is the answer. This isn't British humour.
Wikipedia's American, though they don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true. Remember, Americans don't know the word bollocks, which is actually bollocks. They do know the word bollocks.
Also, we've probably got some American listeners, so hi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Red Dwarf does make an appearance in British humour in the British class system, which I can get. I understand why that's there.
Yeah.
Because they generally talk about the class. It's the class thing. That's British humour.
Yeah, okay, yeah, true.
So, it does appear in the Wikipedia. And then you've got things like Alan Partridge, which is more embarrassment of social ineptitude.
Yeah.
Which you do get a bit of with Rimmer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do an episode on British humour at some point.
No, we won't. We clearly don't know what the fuck it is.
No, we don't.
Wikipedia does not count.
So, quick turns. Oh, no, wrong episode. Wrong episode.
Stop it.
Colin, is Ringo a good drummer?
Yes, he fucking is.
I do love a good Beatles jab, and I enjoyed that immensely.
I have in my notes, Ringo, rant. Ringo is a fantastic drummer. There was a one-off joke made by John Lennon that Ringo isn't even the best drummer in the Beatles, and people have run with that, but he's a fucking great drummer. If you listen to some of the drums on A Day in the Life and stuff like that, he's playing, he's not just a normal four-to-the-floor, straight-ahead drummer. There's sort of jazz technique coming in there. He's a really, really interesting drummer that some of the rhythms that he comes out with, nobody else was coming out with at all. And this one joke that Lennon made, just completely, everybody ran with it, and he's been the butt of jokes ever since. And justice for Ringo. He was also the best narrator on Thomas the Tank Engine.
So for me, right, I'm more likely to kind of be on the side of the guy who narrated Thomas the Tank over someone who smacked his wife. So, yeah, fuck John Lennon.
Absolutely. Lennon's a cunt.
And that's the title of this week's episode.
But I'm not a huge fan of the Beatles, so I popped for that joke. I really did enjoy it, because any little jab against the Beatles, because it's so fucking rare, I enjoy.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
They're almost as overrated as you two.
They're not.
That's a whole different matter. Anyway, so we get the introduction of Hilly. Hilly's here.
Yes.
Hattie has arrived.
Hattie plays Hilly and then Holly, and oh my goodness.
Yes.
And all kinds of manners. I mean, what does that mean to Holly in... right, okay, this is probably a good time to talk about Holly and Hilly and Hattie and Norman and Colin.
Yes.
I think you would make a good Holly, actually, I think. But, yeah, so you were going to talk about Holly and what happens from here on in, basically, because there's quite a lot of things happen, don't there? Yeah,
so this is Norman's last episode for quite a while, as Holly. He had recently got married and moved up to Edinburgh, and then the rehearsals were between London and Manchester, and then it was filmed in Manchester. And basically, he couldn't commit as much, and he wasn't turning up to rehearsals. And he'd also got his own TV series starting in 1989 called I Love It, which I've only just realised the pun in that title.
What, just now? Or
just this exact second as I said it then. I've read it for 20 years.
Wow.
More than 20 years, 30-something years. Right, yeah. Because it's like iRobot, but it's I Love It, and I've thought of it like that. But yeah, no, it's I Love It. How did I not fucking pick up on that? Anyway,
you're too busy admiring Ringo's drumming.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Basically, yeah, he was. Some accounts say that he left, but it says that there were a lot of conflicts between him and the producers because he wasn't turning up to rehearsals. And essentially, from what I've read, it sounds a little bit more like they sacked him more than he left.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting on the most recent. I know we've briefly talked about the fact they haven't watched the new documentaries, but they do talk about this, but only ever so slightly. So they talk about him going to Scotland, and they say that there was a bit of angst between the fact that they felt that he didn't need to come down because he's just a talking head at the end of the day.
Yeah, and
they could learn the lines, but the people around there were saying, no, we want the chemistry of you together. I mean, they went to Rill, didn't they, at the end of the day together? And he didn't need to be there. So they touched upon that a little bit. And then Danny John Jules talks about and kind of mimics his accent about saying, no, Norman, don't go kind of thing. Yeah. So, and that's all they really touch upon. They don't really say anything more than that. So it only literally just a quick, 2-minute sketch, really. But
I think because they've sort of reconciled with him coming back in the Dave series later on, that I think that might be why they're not going to elaborate too much on that. I think they're like, it's all water under the bridge. Let's not do sort of blaming each other and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, so Hattie Hayridge was in this episode unknowingly with the person she was replacing that she didn't know she was replacing yet. Because when they recorded this, it wasn't known by any of them properly, apart from possibly some of the producers, that Norman wouldn't be back for Series 3. So Hattie was. They saw her on. It was on Friday Night Live, which was the sort of comedy and music variety show that Ben Elton used to present.
Which Craig Charles was on, wasn't he?
Craig Charles was on it. Yeah. You had Harry Enfield starting out as Loads of Money on there. You had Julian Clary started out on there. And
that's quite the list.
It started off sort of a lot of British comedies' careers because they it was one of the few places where the alternative comedy scene that were playing in places like the Comedy Store were and the comic strip. It was a big primetime mainstream place that they could be brought into people's homes that don't even go to comedy clubs. And so it was 8th of April 1988 was Hattie's first ever TV appearance, and Ed Bye, the producer, was watching because he used to previously work on it was when it was Saturday Live he worked on it, and when it moved to Friday Live he stopped working there but still used to watch it. Saw her on it and thought, she's brilliant and she's got the same sort of energy and demeanour and sort of bewilderedness as Norman. So they knew that they needed a female counterpart for Holly. So they basically she didn't even have to audition. They just sent her sent the part to her agent, and she got the job. And then apparently she did have to audition for Series 3, but it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that she was going to get the job because she was so good at it. And I watched that episode of Friday Night Live that she was on. Her set is the best thing on it by absolutely miles. Ben Elton, he's not aged well. His comedy is, I was just watching it going, this is utterly, utterly terrible.
Just not funny, or was it 80 Dick?
a bit of both.
Right.
You know, most of it, he's got his really stupid way of saying things that's just he thought was, amusing at the time, and now it's just like, oh God, that's just annoying. Loads of Money is just so. Yes, that's the character, but he's just so Thatcherite that I was just watching it going.
Yeah.
But these fuckers are in power now, you know.
I think something like Loads of Money was brilliant at the time,
yes.
well observed, kind of current comedy that aged, significantly aged, and isn't funny anymore. Whereas that just isn't the case with Red Dwarf.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a different mindset, though, isn't it? It's more of a human kind of. It's a play on the human soul, kind of. I know you don't like words, so I apologise. But it's a play on the human condition, isn't it? Really,
yeah.
Red Dwarf, and it's like your porridge. It's your sitcom based in space, but it's about the characters talking amongst themselves and dealing with problems, getting through it. Whereas like that, it's just like literally, it's a discussion on the times in which they live in, and and you can imagine Spit an Image, obviously which they were involved in, and I know that's coming back, but I don't. How would you view that in the time in which it was in
without remembering the news,
without the context?
Yeah. Whereas Hattie's stand-up set works perfectly. 32 years later?
Right. Yeah.
Because she's not put anything in it that really dates it. There's quite a lot of quite absurd humour in there, and it's just funny jokes, and it's great. And I'm going to find loads more of her stand-up stuff because she's brilliant. I was
At the
really
risk
impressed.
of having more specials than we have episodes on episodes, I'd love to have a look at the stand-up of maybe even Norman Lover and Hattie Hayridge and do an episode on that.
I saw someone on, was it on Twitter? I saw someone today with a video collection, VHS collection, and there was a Craig Charles stand-up.
There was?
And I haven't seen that. So
I hope it's not shit.
Well,
I've seen him DJing a few times.
Yeah, well, there's a colleague of mine at work who absolutely loves him from that, and has spoken to him loads, apparently. But on whatever state she was in. But yeah, let's not
She's
go down that route.
Thank you for that, Kurt.
She will. But yeah, but anyway, so as Hattie's involved in this, I think also as well some of those auditions. One of the things that was mentioned within the documentary as well is that they flirted with the idea of having a different type of character, and then they eventually went, no, let's stick with the kind of playoff we've got now.
Yeah,
with the dry humour rather than actually trying to change it. Let's keep it as it is.
Yeah,
and I think that was absolutely the right decision to make.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, but Holly thinks he's in there. Which I love that.
It's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's right.
He is. And then we get the alternative Rimmer and Lister. Now, this goes to my Kurt's little Rimmer corner. We have another version of Rimmer. I think we're up to about 4 different versions of Rimmer now so far.
You're obsessed with this, and we are going to have to do a special on it, but I'm going to get bloody confused. I know I am. All these Rimmers.
I know. Well, what did you make of the alternate counterparts in this in this introduction? The way the door opens and you see the polar opposites, the gender opposites of the characters.
For me, the actor who plays female Rimmer gets Rimmer. She has obviously studied the tapes, seen what Chris Barry does, and she's brilliant. I'm not saying that the what's her name, Deb Lister. I'm not saying that the actor that plays Deb Lister's bad, but the actor that plays Arlene Rimmer is so spot on, like uncannily good.
It's she's got the nostril flares and stuff. But...
She really has, and the kind of the posturing and the kind of Oh, she's just brilliant. Like I say, I feel bad for the actor that played Deb because she's great as well, but the actor that played Arlene is out of this world.
And also, this probably won't mean much to either of you guys, but there'll certainly be some of our listeners who have got young kids and have therefore watched the absolutely amazing CBeebies cartoon Hey Dougie.
I know Hey Dougie.
Never heard it.
Suzanne Burtish, the actress that plays Arlene Rimmer, is Tag's mum, which I found out looking it up. She's only in one episode with a speaking part, but I looked her up on IMDb going, I wonder what else she's been in. And that was the one that really stood out to me because Hey Dougie is amazing.
I have to admit, I've not seen her anywhere else that I know of, which seems weird because she's so bloody good.
She has been in lots of other TV things, but I don't think there were any others that I had particularly watched. There was Rome she's been in.
Oh, okay. Right. Good.
She was a character called Alini in that, but I've not watched it. She has been in things like Secret Diary of a Call Girl, Poirot, Rosemary and Thyme.
Right, okay.
Silent Witness, so it's loads of sort of crime type stuff. She's been in Coronation Street.
Has she been in the bill? She's bound to have been in the bill.
Everyone's been in the bill.
And Casualty.
I think she has. She's been in Space Precinct as well.
Oh, okay. Because I've definitely seen the actor who plays Deb elsewhere. I vividly remember her playing the Brigadier's replacement in Doctor Who in a story called Survival.
Yes.
And I've seen her elsewhere as well, but I don't feel like I've seen the actor who plays Arlene anywhere else.
Yeah, she's not been in anything I've particularly noticed. But yeah, they've all been in stuff like Casualty and The Bill, because most British actors have been in those at some point.
Has Craig Charles been in Coronation Street as well?
Yes, because wasn't that the
major character? Yeah,
wasn't that the whole point of Back to Earth? Was he met himself
from what? Acting in Corrie?
Yeah, because that's why it was in Coronation Street, and I didn't get any of those jokes because I don't watch Coronation Street.
Yeah, in Back to Earth, I know you've only seen bits of it, I think, Mark, haven't you? Did you see the whole lot?
I've not seen it. Well, no, I saw it once, and I don't... In fact, I think I saw the first episode and disliked it so much that I didn't watch the rest.
Okay, well, we'll go into too much detail.
Doesn't it end on a weird cliffhanger with a polymorph, or have I imagined that?
No. It's the squid.
Oh, okay, I was close.
Yeah,
so, yes, I've seen that.
You're right, you have seen it. Then you have seen it. If you remember that, because that kind of like plays it back into Red Dwarf's lore. So yeah.
Oh, it's the despair squid from
it's
Back to Reality.
It's the female switches.
Right.
So the fact it's not it doesn't despair, it sends you the other way. So
right.
It's kind of like that kind of thing. But anyway, that's for a lot longer down the line.
Few series time.
Yeah. So, but what this whole premise is really interesting because of what it's doing and the way it's pointing out various stereotypical things that the way the world is envisaged. But what I really find interesting is the way that the point of view of storytelling is done here, because we almost switch the characters of we're following the female counterparts more than we are with Rimmer and Lister that we know, because it's pointing out the gender swap as much and the some of the actual ideas behind looking at culture and stuff like that, but it takes it from a viewpoint of the female counterparts rather than Rimmer and Lister, and rightly so, because of the way it's like it does that for both comic effect but also to make you think as well. And it's interesting how they do that, because it's a switch that you wouldn't necessarily expect, and the way that Rimmer reacts is particularly interesting in that it's everything that he would, because that's the way Arlene is, but he just doesn't see it in himself. It's like holding up a mirror to himself, and he can't ratify the two things, and that goes back to the ickiness of early in the episode, which is where it's getting at. So, Colin, I don't know. So I don't know what you think to the way that they actually filmed it and did it this way, in that kind of regard, because it is interesting how they kind of frame it in that way, because it could have gone a different way, really.
Yeah, no, I think they probably went the best way for it. I think it worked really well. But yeah, I've not really thought much about the filming of it on this one particularly, and the technological side so much.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the way it's framed more, like, you know, because you have to you're putting a mirror up to what we in our world know. Yeah. And, you know, you know what I mean? So you have to kind of go that way because of the way that, you know, it's like saying things like, you know, I'm just a discardable sex object and stuff. And, you know, it's kind of like, it is quite off-putting when you view it, because it's like, well, yeah, and it's not quite the same, the way the Rimmer's our mirror, whereas like Lister and Lister, those two are very, very similar. Yes. You know, so they're not, you know what I mean? So you have to have that dichotomy of the two to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Arlene Rimmer she's repulsive. Basically, the scene where she's trying to hypnotise him, it's horrible. But then it's at the time, that's probably what a lot of women going out to bars had to put up with from blokes, as that was the done thing in the 80s.
Yeah, so. It's really unpleasant, like actively unpleasant to watch, and I think it's supposed to be. The depiction is unforgivably leery, and it's really awkward, and she's completely clueless about how to treat someone that you're attracted to. And you almost forget that Rimmer is exactly the same until he proves that he's exactly the same. So I was less uncomfortable with this than I was with the hypnotising thing earlier, because I guess the kind of worm that turned thing was the what's whole point of the episode. Well, yes, what does a worm do? But yeah, the worm that turns, you know what I mean? It feels like it's supposed to make you feel yucky, whereas I'm not so sure that you were supposed to feel as yucky earlier on in the episode.
Yeah. Well, I think the sci-fi does this a lot because it has the power to do it. It's literally heightening that to such a degree that if the roles were reversed, even then, I think it would have been to a point of like, that's too much. You know what I mean? Yeah. Even in that context, is too much, and I think that's the point. I think that's what they're trying to get at, is that you have to mention it earlier in the episode to get to this point where it's like, oh, don't like this, but you kind of accept it because of the norms that you're expected to understand. Yeah. And you know what I mean? It's like it's done it in a way that you have to accept it because of that, and it makes you then think about how icky and how it makes you reflect on your own personal stance and how you would feel if you did that to somebody. It's fascinating,
I think, because the toxic masculinity portrayed by a woman in the 80s, it's actually, when you think about it, pretty fucking forward thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because this is nothing short of toxic masculinity, entitlement, and sexualization of the opposite gender, or you know, gay men can do it too, sexualization of the same gender. And it's, I think I was initially really uncomfortable, but as I thought about it, I was like, fucking hell. Okay. Yeah. That's really quite deep. Again, we're talking one more time about how Red Dwarf is so much more than lol sci-fi.
It's got a message, man.
It has got a message. I mean, and it's not alone. I mean, sci-fi tropes do it. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, we joked about last week about Star Trek and Next Generation, Gates McFadden and all that kind of thing, but I can't imagine Star Trek doing this. This is too far for Star Trek to go. You know, it's just like it's not the kind of world in which they live in. Red Dwarf can, because he's talking about stereotypical normities and how how people are viewed and stuff like that, and it can do it with a tad of humour, but it's still got that sci-fi trope of being an allegory for what the actual world is like at the time.
Yeah,
and it's just really, really interesting that they can do that and can go this, because this is dark stuff. This isn't something that's it's. I mean, yes, Star Trek does touch upon rape occasionally, with various aspects in it, but it's a very touchy subject. They don't really talk about PTSD after the events, and it just resets and whatever. And yeah, they do it to a degree here, but they don't get as dark as this in the show with just like the way that the actual world is like. You know what I mean? It's not like that's like your everyday person, whereas like rapists are rapists. You know what I mean? It's kind of like this is like your everyday person, and the socio-economic status of the world really, and how that affects people. And it's just really interesting to me how it does that.
I know you've played devil's advocate in the past, and this is deliberately devil's advocate. Do you think it was intentionally as deep as we are now currently taking it 30 years later as educated people who have lived through the culture change since this to what we have now? Do you feel that it was that clever? Because I'm tempted to think that it was, and I wonder whether you think it is as well.
I don't think you can get this dark and not be. I can't. There's nothing generally funny overall over the as a story. There's nothing really that funny. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it's total like a mirror. As I said before, it's more like a mirror. Yes, you get the whole pregnant kind of thing and stuff afterwards, and that in itself as an issue, but it's definitely pointing at the way the world is right now. And with people written on Spitting Image, to go back to that again, they're not silly people. They're not they're not unintelligent. You know what I mean? Yeah. They know what they're saying. They're not and they can guise it in the way that they have done in the past. But I think out of the episodes we've talked about so far, this is by far the darkest one, which says a lot, really.
Yeah,
I would agree with that completely.
Right. What about? Okay, so let's go a bit to which I have a slight concern about. I don't know about you, but the dog.
Why do you have a concern about the dog? I like the dog.
The dog is funny, but it's the fact of the South American, Southern America kind of aspect to him, and it's kind of stereotypical a little bit.
He really reminds me of George W. Bush, but likeable.
I mean, for me, as a fan of cats, the depiction of the cat as bright but shallow is perfect. Whereas the depiction of the dog as lovable but a bit smelly is also fucking accurate. How is this problematic to you, Kurt?
Oh, if you put it that way, I'm probably because I'm just seeing it from a point of view. It's almost like a yokel that they're kind of pushing that thing, but I didn't really think about it that way.
Hillbilly,
yeah.
I think you've got a point. Why is he American rather than a dopey British dog?
Well, I guess why is the cat American?
Is the cat American?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then
he has an American accent. Therefore, his counterpart has an American accent.
He doesn't sound like Donny John Jules, does he?
No.
I just thought he was putting on a kind of stylishy voice, but no, you bloody hell, I'm an idiot. So yeah, there you go, an American. So where's your issue, Kurt?
I haven't got a major issue
that you're wrong.
Okay, all right. I haven't got a major issue. My point was, it seems like the kind of pigeonholed the dog as a yokel kind of from the deep south of America. The kind of why did they go that way? Because where's the cat meant to be from then? If it's American,
the cargo hold.
Well, it's from the cargo hold. Yeah, it's from the cargo hold. Anyway, let's move on.
I really love the way that they reveal that it's a dog.
I think it's brilliant. Yeah,
where the cat's gone. There's a female lister. There's a female rimmer. I need to go and find mine. And then Deb just points out that it's a dog.
Going to be disappointed. No,
it's a wonderful, wonderful moment. I think the guy who plays the dog plays a dog really well, just like Danny John Jules plays a cat really well. Dogs are kind of exactly like the way this guy plays it.
Lolloping.
Yeah. What I really do like about the dog, and I do like the dog, don't get me wrong, is the dance. His dance, I think, is just is perfect, absolutely perfect. The cats, I'm not too sure about.
Why did they speed the cat's dance up?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
So I was having a look on IMDb, and it specifically says in there, it is not known why they sped up the cat's dance as one of its trivia bits, which, first of all, isn't trivia. Saying we don't know why this happened isn't fucking trivia, IMDb. But I do know why it happened, because they talked about it in the commentary thingy that they did recently on YouTube, and it was just for time. Basically, Danny John Jules had done this really, really brilliant technical dance, and they didn't want to cut any of it out, so they just sped it up, because otherwise the episode was going to overrun. And they didn't want to actually cut it. They just sped that bit up to avoid
it's interesting. It's interesting that because part of the episode is there's a long run of the ship. There's a long passover of the ship, which I felt could have been knocked down by quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's like that edit just seems too long for me, and then they speed that bit up.
Yeah, and Rob Grant did say that that's one of the bits he would change if he could go back, that he would just cut bits of the dance rather than speed it up because it didn't make any sense.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Well, I'm glad it was touched upon because, as I say, it just seems really daft. I just didn't. I've never understood that. I've never understood why they did that. But as you say, if that's the reason, does that mean we have to slow it down when we watch it?
I mean, you probably could do it now, couldn't you? You wouldn't be able to do that on VHS.
Yeah, just half-time speed. And Netflix supposedly is going to be doing that at some point, apparently. That you can watch films at 1.5 times speed and stuff, which I'm not sure if that's the best way of doing things. But anyway, that's a different conversation.
Depends what you're watching. There's some things that are way too slow.
Well, yeah.
But then I do listen to podcasts at 1.8 speed because I've trained my ears to listen to stuff quicker because I don't have time to listen to all the podcasts I want to listen to otherwise.
Yeah, well,
1.8. I listened to mine at 1.2 and I thought that was pushing it.
Yeah, I'm around the 1.2 to 1.5, and the remove silence as well. Not there's never any silence between us though, of course.
There's never any silence in podcasts. There's never any podcasts in ones that I edit because I put music behind it all.
Well, that's true. Yeah. What was I going to say then? I was going to say something really clever. Oh well, it's gone.
There's the bit where the two listers are having the sort of drinking game. In that bit, which is brilliant because I mean, you've got Lister chucks the water, chucks his beer backwards behind him instead of drinking it, and then Deb Lister spits it all in his face, which that was one that they kept having to retake over and over and over again because they kept bursting into laughter. One of the times Craig Charles decided to himself just spit all the water back in her face. Why do I keep saying water? So it probably actually was water, but spit the beer back into her face. And there's a bit on one of the Smeg Ups videos where it's showing them doing loads of retakes on that.
Yeah, I think I remember that. I do remember that one. So let's have a look. I have actually completely lost my trail of thought, which is not good. So as I say, with the dancing and stuff like that, I just didn't really get. But then, as I say, with the Rimmer kind of scene where he's just going to bed because he's got a bad head and stuff like that was quite interesting. And then obviously the following morning happens, and Lister wakes up and sees the boots, and and then we get what I think is really interesting, the way that it's filmed. that when she starts saying, "I hope you get pregnant," and that whole scene, actually, the way they film it is actually quite clever. That it keeps referring back to like her, Deb Lister, and then obviously eventually when she actually physically looks at Dave Lister, and you see it's directed at her, and then obviously Rimmer's glee, which is something that we've seen before, but this is like total glee in Rimmer's eyes now, and actually saying "up the duff, laddie," which I think is a total Rimmer line.
So I've got a lot to say about this scene. First up is, how many times have I woken up like that? Fuck knows. The other one is my quote of the episode. Anytime I feel that any of my friends have behaved even remotely promiscuously, I refer to them as Miss Yo-Yo Knickers. Doesn't matter about your gender. If you've been a bit of a slag, you are Miss Yo-Yo Knickers.
Fair.
Excellent. And what can people say back to it? They can't say anything back to it, can they?
No. Most of the time, the gays will just nod.
Yeah. Yeah, all right then. Fair enough. Oh, man. Rimmer's talking about Rimmer's glee, though. The fact that he says, "Up the duff, laddie," then he says, "Don't get emotional, not in your condition." It's just like, it's just so brilliant, the fact that
it's naughty. It's really well done, actually. This isn't icky at all. This is funny and emphasises gender roles, yada, yada, yada. It's great. I loved it. I thought it was, again, the delivery, like you were saying, is perfect.
Yeah, and agony, this gets better and better. And then we get a football analogy. I was like, "Come on, you Reds." Right at the very end as well. And then this goes way back to the second episode, which I was referring to, and Future Echoes gets named, which I really like that. I like the callback to that episode. I think it was really nicely done, saying about the twin boys and stuff.
I think it's the first, as far as I can recall, it's the first real bit of continuity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where they're calling back to something that other than obviously the main premise of everything, but they're calling back to something where there was a mystery that has been resolved. Which is cool. I dig it.
Yeah. Did you know that there was actually an episode written that was supposed to be episode 1 of series 3, where they actually show Lister's pregnancy?
I didn't.
Not only was it written, there's on one of the DVD extras, the script is read over some animation, and the script's read by Chris Barry. That's another special that we need to look at.
Excellent.
Okay,
and it was called Dad.
That is definitely one we're going to have to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to do that. I think that might be a one between season 3 and 4, I reckon.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, no, season 2 and 3.
2 and 3, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Let's do that.
Yeah,
so that might
definitely
be our next episode, depending on when this goes out.
Yeah, let's do that between those two series. That makes a lot of sense, thinking about it. An alternative ending kind of thing. Because it does end on a cliffhanger where, he's fucking pregnant.
Yeah. And the next episode, we find out how it all happens and what happens and everything in a fantastic episode. Which basically is everything's wrapped up in the space of 25 seconds.
It's still funnier than the scrolling text on the USA specials.
It's not hard, though, is it?
No, kicking the dick is funnier than the scrolling text on the USA specials.
Yeah. Right. That is the end of season 2. We're no longer newbies to this, boys. We have now entered the, we're almost getting into cult status as of next season.
Yeah.
What have you made to season 2 compared to season 1, Mark?
Honestly, I think they've just been consistently brilliant. With the restrictions they had on budget, they picked the very best actors they possibly could, almost without exception, including the guest stars, and they've benefited from that. And the whole thing has been an absolute joy. Even if the budget was 50p an episode, it's been an absolute pleasure watching this all back, you know.
Yeah, it's great, and it still really, really holds up. And I think season 2 is... I always think of it along with series 1. It's a little bit like... not a good thing to mention at the moment because she's been horrible to everyone, but Harry Potter books, the first 2 Harry Potter books seem like 2 very similar things. It's almost like a retread of the first one, but still good in its own way. And then the third one, it changes things up, and this is the same. There's a lot of changes that are coming in the future. The theme tune, we've got a new Holly, we've got a bigger budget. It stays good, but there's a lot of very, very different things in the future. Whereas you could interchange various episode 1 and episode 2 episodes and not particularly notice really so much. It wouldn't matter as much if some of those were changed in order. Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's amazing to think, you know, that the fact that Mark alluded to it before about Doctor Who kind of finishing up. And the fact that, you know, Red Dwarf benefits from that, the fact that, you know, the people involved in Doctor Who then come on season 3 with Red Dwarf, which is just, you know, I mean, the coincidence is just incredible. And the fact that, you know, it does change. The first 2 seasons for me, I would say that season 1 overall is probably better. Season 2 definitely has its moments and definitely has its episodes, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But as you say, it definitely cements it. It's more of the same, but also continuing on. But you know, we've got a lot more to come when we do hit season 3, and majority of the reason is these costume changes, like the people we mentioned, and the Doctor Who people coming on and changing up and stuff like that, which you know it. And then it becomes this mammoth. You know, they're saying this in the documentary that we covered earlier in the summer, that you know, this was the time where it kind of like it find its wings, and it's you know, it's time. It just goes up a notch. You know, it becomes. It's no longer. I think Robert Llewellyn says, when does a cult become a hit? Because, you know, season 3, what isn't a cult? You know, it becomes mainstream comedy at that point. So a lot to look forward to.
I think for me, it's almost like Red Dwarf is in 4 blocks. You've got the first 2 seasons, which fit well together, and if you didn't have any more, that would have been a kind of like a full unit with a cliffhanger at the end, but still it would have been like a full kind of finished block. And then you've got 3 to 6, which is where it's at its absolute peak. Then you've got 7 and 8, which is where they're flogging a dead horse. And then I don't know what happens after that. So 4 distinct blocks for me. And I'm looking forward to kind of heading into my next block with Series 3.
I definitely agree with those exact definitions of the blocks as well. So, that's not just something that you've thought of that's your weird way of looking at things. That works as a universal thing. We know that anyway, but
I mean, you're right. I mean, I would agree as well, because obviously, you know, I mean, there is a massive gap between 6 and 7. But there was a massive gap between 5 and 6. There was a gap, wasn't there? You know, but at the same time, 5 and 6 belong to each other, whereas 7 does something, and I mentioned this. We mentioned this in the documentary series that we've been through. Is that they are talking about? You mentioned, Colin, before about the fact that they don't want to dive into some of the aspects of like the deeper stuff, like Norman Levitt, like leaving and things like that, because it's not a positive spin to put on it. They literally leave. There's no laughter track on 7 and 9. On season 7 and 9, and they just leave it at that. It's like, I would have liked to have had more on that, please. But they're not going to touch upon that, are they? But and 7 obviously was the time they were kind of like totally aiming at the American audience, and as we mentioned before about it's not almost like a 2-camera sitcom without the live audience, try and make it more dynamic from an American standpoint. And it's a bit hit and miss whether or not it worked or not. And having that division, of like 7 and 8, even though 8 does go back, tread back a little bit on what it did. And I'm a big fan of season 8, and I was actually surprised how much people don't like it. I know there's various different aspects in the fandom about it, but I actually really like season 8. But there is a mixed response to season 8.
I'm looking forward to seeing it again, because I didn't watch it since the first time it was broadcast. And I definitely remember liking bits, but there's season 7 and season 8. I don't remember which bits are from which bit.
Right.
I get them all a bit mixed up together. But that's for future series when we get there.
It is indeed.
Bloody miles
We've seen
away.
a future echo. We're talking future echoes here.
We are.
We're talking. So other than that, then, anything you want to finally wrap up for this season? Anything you want to talk about season 2? Anything in Parallel Universe before we call it a day?
I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, I've had the best time doing this, and it almost feels like we're moving on to almost a different podcast in a strange way when we move on to series 3.
Yeah.
And the series 3 to 6 block is so good. I'm really,
excited.
really, really excited about these next lot that we're going to be doing.
Yep, absolutely.
So
excellent.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, we shall call that it. We shall. We'll take a little break. We'll. I don't know if I'll take Blue Midget this time. I think I think last time I said about this, I took the Starbug. So I'll take Blue Midget away. Colin, we're going to send you off in a pod, I think. If that's all right.
Sod that, I'm using the hop drive.
Oh, you're using the hop drive. You can use the hop drive and go
could
on.
Be a laugh.
Go on, see an alternative universe. If you want to stay in Red Dwarf, Mark, you can do, or if you want to take Starbug 1 out for a little trip, you may do, because Starbug 1 isn't quite here yet, but it will be soon.
Well, I know what happened to Red Dwarf, so I should probably get on Starbug, really.
Okay. Excellent stuff. Right, okay, so where, Colin, can people find you online if they want more of your Ringo loving drumming?
Well, I'll try not to mangle it as much as I did last episode. So I've got 2 other podcasts. I have We Dig Music, which is me, my friends Ian and my friend Tracy, just talking about general music-y type stuff. And I also have another podcast called Free With This Month's Issue, which is me and Ian, again, plus a different guest each month, talking about old free CDs from like Kerrang, Q, Metal Hammer, Enemy, that sort of thing. And you can find both of those podcasts on wedigpodcasts.com, or you can find them on the We Made This Network, obviously, or you can find them on Twitter at We Dig Music Peak. I told you I was going to mess it up.
Hey, you were doing so well.
Yeah, I really was, wasn't
well.
I? And then I started looking it up to make sure I didn't lost where I was. So this Free With This Month's Issue is Twitter/This Month's Issue, and then We Dig Music is We Dig Music Pcast. And if you want to find me just being me, it's Mogwai Fear Satan on Twitter. Also on Instagram, Facebook, MySpace probably still.
MySpace. Oh, I forgot IT crowd friends face. Mark, how was your drink?
Oh, I had a salted caramel porter from Marks and Sparks. It was bloody lovely.
Excellent. Well, it's definitely, that's the beginning of a new era as well. The fact that we can drink on the podcast.
I know, I've never done that before. I hope I didn't slur.
Well, I think you were all right. Yeah, well, there's definitely some slurs. Maybe not that type of slur though. And we may well revisit the drinking aspect potentially at some point, and maybe a special.
I'm not sure that's a good idea.
No, I'm not sure.
Beer milkshake, maybe.
But, yeah, maybe the end of season. Maybe the end of season 3. We'll have another couple of drinks. But where can people find you online? Should they wish to hear you on the multitude of podcasts that you are currently on?
Okay, so very quickly, I'll run through them all. We talked about Writing a Childhood at the start of the show. That's my new podcast about kids' telly at RITC Pod on Twitter. I also present Pull or Pass, which is a comic book show with my friend Zach at Pull or Pass on Twitter. I also present Super Tat Film Club, which is about B movies and martial arts movies and basically films we like. But that's with my friends Malachi J. Matthews and Hollywood Fletch. They may not be their real names. At Tat Club on Twitter. And finally, my podcast, which is based around my actual real-life job as a humanist celebrant, where I have a different guest on each fortnight to talk about birth, relationships, and death relating to naming ceremonies, weddings, and funerals. That's at Life's Milestones on Twitter. All of those, except the Tat Club, can be found on the We Made This Podcast network.
Fantastic. You can find me on Twitter at rmuldrake. It's RMULDRAKE, which is a deep dive into the X-Files lore, and which I'm a member of the X-Cast, the X_cast on Twitter. So you can find me talking all things X-Files Season 6 at the moment. You can also find me on its spin-off show on The Time Is Now Pod. That's where you can find it on Twitter at The Time Is Now Pod. I'll start that again. You can also find me on the Millennium Podcast, which is a TV show, which is a spin-off from the X-Files as well, where I show run The Time Is Now, which is found on Twitter at The Time Is Now Pod. And we're currently in the 3rd season. There's also the Star Trek Picard podcast as well, Make It So, which you can find on Twitter at Jean-Luc Podard. And that's currently on hiatus at the moment, but you may well be getting a couple of specials here and there with that show as well. So plenty for me to get my teeth into. But that is it for season 2. As I say, we're really looking forward to season 3. But before we do get there, there will be some specials coming your way, as always, between each of the seasons. We'll have plenty lined up for you. There's new ideas coming about all the time, so keep an eye out for us.
Did you know that there's Red Dwarf porn? It's called Pink Dwarf.
Right. Okay. That may be a podcast that I might not join you on, Mark, to be perfectly honest with you.
How about you, Colin?
I think that might be one for Latham, I reckon.
All right.
Did they have a pink midget?
I would assume so.
The purple member.
Well, Starfuck, maybe.
I'm sure we can think of loads. I mean, Rimmer doesn't even need his name changing.
No. Oh, man. Oh, right. We're getting delirious now. It's time to go. But yeah, so keep an eye out for all those delights. And, if Mark is available on request, I'm sure he'll whore himself out whenever he wants to.
Wow. Well, just because it's true doesn't mean it's not mean.
Anyway, let's get out of here. Let's enjoy Christmas and enjoy all the break in between. We'll be back with season 3 in 2021. Yeah, and hopefully 2020 will be far, far, far behind us, and we can start to have a bit of a better year than we have so far.
Be bloody weird if 2020 continues into 2021.
Well, don't say it.
It's going to, isn't it? It's going to. But Red Dwarf will be here, and we'll be here, and we'll be helping them to numb some of this horribleness that's happening. But yes, until next time, everyone, remember.
Wham, bam, thank you, mister.
Elsewhere on We Made This. Pick a disc.
And I got I bought Riot first, and I was like, oh, I really like this. And then I went back and bought their first album, which I can't think of the name of the first one right now, but I listened to Riot more than I did the first one for sure. Yes, I recently found my old iPod, and you know how it used to, there's a section under settings that would tell you your most listened to songs. This was the top, like however many tracks it is, like 14 slots. And then it was everything else I listened to.
Right in the childhood.
Robin, the hooded man, do. Mate, before we do anything else, that soundtrack.
Yeah, you're a big fan of it, aren't you? Digging it. I could see the admiration for it in your little twinkle in your eyelids.
Oh, twinkle, it put a tear. It's beautiful, beautiful music by a band called Clannad, who obviously play that kind of music generally. Yeah. And it won a BAFTA.
Oh, okay.
That's because it deserved it.
Yeah. You know what? It definitely fit the aesthetic to the shows.
Cinemortuary podcast.
Yeah, I want to say, and I don't like say this lightly, but this might be my favourite 2 minutes of any film we've reviewed on the podcast so far.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking wild. It is pretty wild.
Sure. If I was given the director's chair and $5 million, this is the sort of thing I'd do.
You'd do that for 90 minutes.
Yes.
It's with the roulette wheel
just
again.
non-stop.
What if he vomits? What if he vomits playing cards? Beautiful.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This podcast network, which can be found online at wemadethispod.com or on Twitter at We Made This Pod.